Hi everyone, welcome to this video where I am setting up my March bullet journal month in my journal and to the theme of Netherlands. I was super excited for this theme because it had been an option before in the past and it didn't quite make it last time, but this time it got an incredible amount of votes. The poll was very clear and then a lot of the comments were also directed towards wanting to see the Netherlands. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this setup, and now let's get started with the cover page, where I love to start with a nice big art piece to welcome you into the month that we head into. And this time, being Netherlands focused, the first thing my brain went to was kind of cliched, but it was the windmills, the tulips, and just being in that springtime vibe, I couldn't go past it. So then once I had decided on focusing on the tulips and just a bed to feel the flowers, I thought it would be ideal to have floating off into the distance a windmill. And now there's so many gorgeous imagery from this place. I am absolutely dying to see this in real life, but the gardens were just spectacular, literally. So I wanted to try and capture a lot of that color in this cover page. So I've gone for a really bright color palette and chose about 4 or 5 colors to focus on, like peaches, pink, peach, yellow, and then like a nice sort of aquary blue, and then a little bit of green as well for the stems. But yeah, just using this nice bright palette, it really got me started on a very whimsical and spring fresh theme. So I, for one, was always a little bit confused about the Netherlands as a whole, whether Holland was the old name for it or whether it was just a part of the Netherlands. And I finally was able to research it and found out that the Netherlands is actually the whole name for the country of 12 provinces within that. So when we use the term Holland, it's often referred to as, it's like just a quick reference to the Netherlands, but Holland is actually 2 provinces put together. And I guess maybe it's the most well known. So that's why a lot of people just say Holland in general. So yes, the Netherlands is the 12 provinces that make up the country as a whole. So there are over 1,000 windmills across the Netherlands. And considering how small the land is, I found that pretty amazing. But I did wonder what the windmills were used for, whether it was like wind energy or seeds or grains or something. But I actually learnt it's a very important reason that they are there, really important. It actually ensures that the water was drained off of the land so that the land didn't become flooded. I didn't realize that the Netherlands was almost 30% below sea level. So that explains why there's a lot of canals, and I think it also explains how fertile the ground is, being able to create this much garden love for us all. There's also a National Mill Day that's celebrated every second Saturday in May, where 600 windmills across the Netherlands are opened to let visitors in, and you can have a look through these historical sites that aren't actually operated regularly or opened regularly to see. And there's only some of them now still in use to drain away that water. And then there's still lots that are used for wind energy, but I believe not as many for producing the grain and flour and stuff like that. So they would be amazing to see in person, I think. Just the structure of them and the sheer size and what they are capable of, I think would be really interesting to go and visit. And a great place to do that is the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Kinderdijk, which has the largest concentration of windmills in all of Netherlands. So yes, we have our lovely windmill in the background, and then in the foreground of this illustration is the beautiful tulip fields. And now there is a place called Keukenhof, and that's also known as the Garden of Europe. So it's a botanical garden that actually has about 7 million tulip bulbs planted each year in it, which is just incredible. And yeah, it's so beautiful to look at. These images were just amazing. So I literally went tulip crazy and was excited to get painting these tulips on the cover page. So to make it a little bit more whimsical and a little bit, interesting, I wanted to add our girl who's jumping into these books and learning about these fairy tales and places she visits. I've decided to put her miniature on one of the tulips, looking into the distance into the windmill. And the reason why I had her looking into the distance of the windmill is because she's using a telescope. One of the inventions from the Dutch was the telescope. They are also responsible for the microscope and the eye test, Bluetooth, all the cassette, DVDs, CDs, Blu-rays, and then man-made islands. So thank you to the Dutch. So as you've been watching, I have used watercolor and gouache on this front page. So all the background is done in my watercolor paints, and then the foreground, the flowers and the girl are done in my acrylic gouache, which I'm really enjoying using. And also at the beginning, I wanted to mention that I've been using a color raised pencil to define my lines before I'm using the gouache or the watercolor lately. So I find that sometimes the pencil does get muddy under the colors. It kind of makes the colors not as rich and vibrant. So by using the color raise, it just means that there's no color bleeding between the two wet and dry materials or media. So yeah, just thought I'd mention that in case you were wondering. And now that I have completed that front page, this is on watercolor paper, by the way, I decided that I had to do a Dutch door in my Dutch themed cover, right, on this spread, and that's just necessary. So I went for this lovely wave down the right hand side and keeping a little bit of the tulip peeking out. And that way I could write the month on the page behind on my calendar spread. And to do this, I finally have bought some lovely Posca paint pens. And I have used paint pens before, but only the big bullet nibs or the chisel nibs. And those just don't do anything for me. But these ones have got like a pointed tip. I wouldn't call them a brush. They're probably more like a bullet, but they're just quite pointed. So you can get really fine lines with them, which I really enjoyed. So I did the title of this page, My March, in a nice cursive font, and my cover page was complete. So moving on now to my calendar spread, where I basically keep a monthly calendar to turn back to see what's coming up, and I put special events on this page. Not much detail other than that goes on here, just my birthdays and any special occasions coming up that I haven't written into the weeklies, or I want to double check something, it'll be on this calendar here. I love to keep this as minimal as possible because the cover spread is always quite full on. So I like to be able to turn to the next page and just have a breath. So this one is definitely a nice calming spread to look at. I decided to focus on the national emblems of the Netherlands. So originally I would do the national animal, which I found out was a lion. And if you've been watching my videos for a long time, I have done a couple of lions in the past because it seems to be a popular national animal. So I didn't really feel like drawing a full-on lion again. So I thought I would try and work on all the national emblems in a cute little drawing. I'm trying to get a little bit more what's the word, like kind of animated, I guess, or cartoony, just like simple and cutesy styles sometimes. So I thought I would try my hand on this page, and I had to include bikes. The first thing you think of with Netherlands, well, not the first thing, because we've already done the first thing. First thing was windmills, then the tulips, and then the bicycles. So this bike here, I thought I would combine a few elements that would tie all those things together. So I've got a bike with a lovely little basket on the front that has been collecting tulips. And who's been collecting tulips, you say? It's Miffy. I had no idea that Miffy was a Dutch creation. The illustrator and author of the Miffy books is Dick Brunner, who is a Dutch man, and it was started in 1955. I had no idea of this, how long this Miffy had been around. I never really thought about it. But yeah, we've got plenty of Miffy books, and I was very excited when I saw Miffy because I like her design. All the design through the books are just so graphic and simplistic, and I thought that would be so much fun to try out in this page. So we've got Miffy with some clogs. Another thing one of those first things you think of with the Netherlands is the clogs as well. So I wanted to make sure we had the clogs, the bike, the tulips, Miffy, and then on the front of the basket I've got the little lion emblem, so you've got the national animal there as well. And by the way, the tulip is the national flower, if you didn't know that. So yeah, this spread just contains all the elements, and it was such a fun little illustration to work on. I do like trying to come up with a way to tell a story of how to include some of these elements. So I'm really happy with it. And the colors are just lovely. So I've got a beautiful aqua. I think I bought 3 colors in the paint pens, and they were a coral, a peach, and then a pale baby pink. So I used those 3 colors and the Tombow pen in an aqua color, and yeah, it just came out really cutesy and nice. So it makes me happy looking at this page. Now, I didn't realize that bikes in the Netherlands, there's actually more of them than people. There's over 22 million bicycles in the country. So that's a lot of bikes, and I love it. I love the thought of just riding around the town and even the country on a bike instead of using cars and stuff. It's awesome. So it's a very necessary part of their life to get around there, and it's probably the reason they're ranked one of the healthiest countries in the world. And I've been wanting a bike for a while, so this drawing actually really makes me want a bike. I want this exact bike. So I might have to try and find it. But here's the finished calendar spread. Now here I'm just folding up a piece of paper to put in between the pages. I haven't had much experience using the Posca pens in these books, so I wasn't sure whether they were going to transfer onto the other page. So just as a little safety precaution, I've put a little piece of paper in between the pages. And now I am starting to work on my gratitude list and my meal planner. So on the left hand side is going to be my gratitude list, which used to be my needs and wants, but over the last few months I just haven't really filled out that spread, and it was becoming just a waste of a page really. But I still didn't want to lose the page itself. It's nice to make it something that you can use all the time. And so something I really wanted to start looking into is recording some of the gratitude moments that come during the day, where I say, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky, oh, that's great, I really appreciate this, and just a place to jot it down would be very beneficial. So I've used it last month and I really liked it, so here it is again. And I like to include a nice quote on this page to remind me of gratitude. So I had a nice, simple gratitude quote last month, and I wanted to find something that was maybe even Dutch inspired for this one, and I found a real good one that I was very excited about. So hopefully I pronounced this correctly, but it's Oost, West, Thuis, Best. And that basically means east, west, home is best, which made me think that it's about saying, yes, there's great things out there, but there's nothing as good as your own home and, your own comfort, which speaks gratitude to me. So be appreciative of what you've got and your own situation and home, or, country, family, whatever. You can tie it to a lot of things. So I thought that was quite a nice quote. And apparently it's said a lot in the Netherlands as well. It's one of their favorite quotes. Correct me, my Netherlands subscribers, if I am wrong. But yeah, I really liked that one. So I wrote that here in a nice calligraphy font. And then I thought I would include a cute little historical Dutch house. So I had a look at all the original Dutch houses, and they are so sweet. These little, very square and then triangle roofs, and usually a green, and they're just the sweetest little things. I kind of wish I had done a proper painting of one. I was that interested in them, but yeah, I just needed something on this page to give it some interest, and I chose this little guy to put down in the bottom corner. And then we are moving on to my meal planner, and this one I usually include the national dish, but I thought there was quite a few things in the Netherlands that I did want to portray. And the first thing I think of with eating wise in the Netherlands is this salty licorice. Now my auntie Dutch. Actually, I have a couple of aunties that are Dutch, and my best friend has got Dutch heritage. So I kind of know a lot of Dutch people, but have never really investigated a lot more. So I am enjoying this setup a lot by learning this. But anyway, I have tried salty licorice from my auntie years ago. I really like it. So maybe there's some Dutch in me somewhere. I am definitely a salty licorice person. They actually call it drop in the Netherlands. So licorice is called drop. And there's certain different levels of saltiness and sweetness. So you kind of, if you don't like the salty stuff, you need to make sure and pay attention to which kind you're actually about to eat. And I think they put initials on most of the top, so you know whether it's a salty one. So the salty ones, or at least what I've read, is one called a zoetdrop, and that means it's like a double salted licorice. So I thought I would hide those on the label of a bottle of gin. The national drink for the Netherlands is gin. I think it's called Jenever in Dutch. And I never realised that gin was actually invented in the Netherlands back in the 16th century, which led me then to learn that the Brits and the Dutch would drink gin back in the 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648. And that's where the term Dutch courage comes from, the fact that they were drinking it back then to give themselves courage to go and fight. Then once I had drawn my gin bottle down the side there, I had to include the famous Gouda cheese. I love a bit of Gouda myself, and it's kind of a national emblem again for the country itself. And then carrots. You're probably wondering what carrots are doing on there. Did you know that carrots have not always been orange? I certainly did not. They originally were purple and whitish, but apparently orange came about from farmers creating a sort of a mutated breed that was honouring the House of Orange, which was the royalty at the time. I think it was King William. And so they made these carrots to symbolise the colour orange, and the family loved them, I guess, because they were orange. But I found that really funny and I had to include it. And then I really didn't like the look of this page, I'm sorry. So I had to include some washi tape on there to make it a little bit more interesting. And I loved this washi tape. The colours really complemented the artwork as well. So that was a nice solution there. And now we are moving on to the next page, which is my mind map spread. Now, my mind map spread was a really fun one for me. I'm using my acrylic gouache to paint a very special painting from a Dutch Baroque period painter called Johannes Vermeer. And this painting is extremely famous, and I'm sure you've all seen it before. I have known it for a long, long time. I remember studying it in school, and then there's also been a movie about it. It's just something you see all the time. Funnily enough, Johannes Vermeer's painting was the title of this movie, The Girl with the Pearl Earring. And the actress who played the lead role as the girl with the pearl earring was actually Scarlett Johansson. So that's interesting. They've got similar names. But I didn't want to paint the painting exactly as a replica of the artwork itself. So what I thought I'd do instead would be to create it as similar to that painting as I could, even using a similar technique. So I'm trying to be really quite blocky with my paintbrush, quite painterly, and just get a lot of different textures and colors into the artwork, which is not normally how I work. I'm quite a smooth, gradient, like fine tuning painter. But yeah, so I tried to be quite loose with this and just get some real visible strokes involved. But then her face, I thought I would do as a different person, like as someone famous from the Netherlands. This painting is able to be seen at a beautiful looking museum called the Mauritshuis, and it stores the works from Rembrandt and Vermeer and a lot of other Dutch celebrated painters and artists from especially the Golden Age. So I'm definitely keen on going to this museum one day. It's situated in The Hague, which is another part of the Netherlands. I just love all the mystery that surrounds these kind of paintings. There's a lot of curiosity about who this woman in the portrait is. Is she, some think it might be the eldest of his 10 children. So Vermeer had 10 children, and it could have been his eldest daughter. She might have been painted in other of his paintings, and the pearl itself actually might have appeared in some of his other paintings as well, which is interesting. So it's just nice, like the Mona Lisa, you don't know who this woman is, and it's that mystery that keeps it so famous, I think. So now for the essential ingredient in a portrait, the face. I decided to put a very famous name that I'd heard of a lot but never really looked into who she was, and that is Matahari. Matahari is a Dutch lady who was born Margaretha Gertrude Zell, but yeah, she's really known by her stage name Matahari. She was a Dutch exotic dancer and courtesan, but she was actually convicted of being a spy for Germany during World War I. So she was killed by a firing squad, and just reading about her history, it's upsetting when you read into these old stories of these famous people, because it really does sound like a lot of suffering was around back then. So yeah, a little bit of a sad story, but I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version and just keep it short and sweet. So basically she was a Dutch girl who answered an ad in a paper to marry a Dutch army captain. They went on to having 2 kids and moved to the Dutch East Indies, which we know now as Indonesia. Which was actually one of our other country options, which someone mentioned that there's ties to Indonesia through the Netherlands, and that's, I think, what was meant. So unfortunately, this man was not very nice to Matahari, and they ended up losing one of their children to syphilis, and the other child got stole back from the captain. The captain decided to keep her to himself, basically, and she ended up dying at 21 as well. So really heartache there, losing both of her children, and her and the captain ended up divorcing because he wasn't a very nice person by the sounds of it. And then she went on to really delve into the Indonesian culture and gave herself a Malay name, which was Matahari, which means sun or eye of the day in Malay language. And then she studied dancing, and all the nice traditional dancing and culture that she learned, she put into a performance and became an exotic dancer. She then moved to Paris, where she would use those new skills on stage in her very provocative performances. Then later on down the track, during the World War, she was able to cross between the borders between France and the Netherlands, and while this was all going on, it sort of brought some attention to her, and then the French wanted to use her as a spy, and apparently she did, but yeah, and then she was tried for it and convicted and shot. So very unfortunate ending, but yeah, quite an interesting story. So despite the fact that that sounded like such a sad story, I guess what I liked about it was that she was someone caught in a very, challenging position, and she took it upon herself to use her creativity, her confidence, and her determination to really become something more in a man's world. So I really enjoyed painting this, trying to emulate the style from Vermeer into such an iconic painting. It was really, really fun to do. I did struggle with the skin a lot, but because it's got that effortless brushstroke vibe, it didn't worry me too much. So yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this page. Now I'm moving on to my habit tracking page or spread, and these are what I call my Goodliness trackers. So they're all the habits that I'm supposed to be doing that I very rarely do. And I just like to track whether I'm going to bed on time, drinking enough water, what other things like exercise, eating healthy, all those good things. And so on this page, I do like to find something that makes me feel warm or inspired. And this one had to be another artist. It had to be Vincent van Gogh. Now I say Van Gogh like I say it all that time, but I've been saying Van Gogh for a long time. So it's not pronounced like that. It's Van Gogh. But I'm sure that that's going to get too tricky for me to keep saying. So apologies that I do not say it correct for the rest of this video. So he had some amazing artworks and extremely famous. There's even an entire museum dedicated to this Dutch painter. I'm sure you've seen plenty of his artworks in the past. One that is extremely famous that I really like is the sunflowers one, but I didn't include that. I did a starry night. What I did was I combined the starry night elements of the sky and the way it was painted into a little, almost like a mirror, like an oval mirror of one of the castles that you can find in the Netherlands. Now, once again, because we are in Europe, there's over 600 castles across the Netherlands. But the one that I found a picture of that I really loved was the castle in Assen. And they've got beautiful gardens surrounding the castle, which are open to tourists. And I just loved the look of the house itself. It looked like, I don't know, a doll's house or something, like a really old world doll's house. And it was over this picturesque lake that is full of koi fish. And so just having all those elements surrounding it just really intrigued me. So I thought I would try and illustrate that castle in the middle of this oval and then surround it by a couple of koi fish and then try and emulate the style of Vincent van Gogh in the sky and the lake reflection as well. Now for this piece, I'm just going to be doing marker. I think I was all painted out by this page after the previous couple of paintings that took a little while. I just wanted to kind of keep it simple on this page. And although I'm using lots of different colors to create this effect, it was nice and easy. And I think the effect was really cool in the end. So yeah, just copying that painting of Vincent's and getting that starry night sky in there, and then just using the black texture to illustrate the definition of the castle itself. And as for Vincent van Gogh, he is a Dutch post-impressionist painter who has definitely become one of the most famous in history, and he created some amazing artworks over just a decade. There was 2,100 paintings done over a decade, which I feel like he should get credit for just for that. That's like over 200 finished paintings a year. So yeah, that's a goal. But he wasn't in the best situation throughout his life. He did suffer of poverty and he had severe depression, which eventually led to his suicide at the early age of 37. So although he seemed to live so much life in that time, and he's lived in several locations in Europe, it's still too young, isn't it? He actually painted the Starry Night painting from his window view of the town of Saint-Remy in south of France, and he was there in an asylum at the time trying to recover from his emotional suffering, and he continued to paint everything. So yeah, this guy had some incredible artworks, and it's such an interesting style that he had as well. So it was so much fun trying to try my hand at creating something similar. Definitely doesn't look like any of his artworks because of the media choice, but it would be fun to create a painting in his style, I think. So that might be a fun sketchbook activity that I'd do in the future. But yeah, really enjoyed learning a bit more about Vincent van Gogh. And now we are moving on to the next page, which is my weeklies page. Now, I used to do weeklies as a separate video, and then lately I've been doing them all in one and just doing a Dutch door weeklies for the 5 weeks. But this time I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to go back and do a weeklies spread for the next video next week. So this time I'm only showing you the first week of March set up here with a nice illustration, which I'll talk about in a second. So yeah, if you do want to come back next week and see a little bit more of the Netherlands in that, I've sort of had an idea that I want to do, and it just would really lend itself to the weeklies spread. So come back next week, and I'm also going to do the vote for the next country that we visit. So if you want to find out what those country options are and you want to give your vote, then please do come back next week for the video. So now we're moving on to our weeklies. This is the first weekly page, as I said, and I wanted to get a little bit more of that whimsical nature happening. I happened to come across a town in the Netherlands in my research that just looked so stunning. I can't even comprehend it. It's just like a fairy tale town. It's called Gogh, and it's filled with beautiful narrow waterways with little boats that go down, little bicycle paths, cobblestones, centuries old thatch roofed houses, and a lot of beautiful gardens. So it was just so inspiring, and I just had to do it. I had to draw it. So I decided to focus on one particular house with this thatched roof, and thought I would just use my markers to give the color to this one in particular, because I really loved these markers that I'd bought. I'd bought this nice aqua color, and I had my peaches already as well, and I tried to keep that kind of color theme going throughout the spreads. But this one just really needed a lot of green because it's so lush, and the photos of this place I was just blown away by. So this is definitely on the cards when I get to the Netherlands. So this beautiful village is actually only accessible fully by a boat, and it's got all these beautiful canals, and it's called the Dutch Venice, and it has 176 bridges throughout the village itself. So it just looks so picturesque, and I would like to live there, and seeing as I can't do that, I just have to draw it. So yeah, I'm just drawing it with my markers and then marking out my days of the week. I had a real debate with myself whether to go in and colour the house into a brown shade, or, because I ended up colouring so much that was the only part left blank. But in the end, I didn't want to add that extra colour, so I've left it blank, and I actually quite like how it turned out. So yeah, there's a lot of colour in there, but keeping that bit separate was kind of sweet. So I'm really happy with how this one turned out, and if you really like it as well, you can actually download this theme from my website and from Etsy. I'll leave the link down in the description box, and if you feel like you want to have these themes each time that I make them, you do get them as part of the Patreon membership when you sign up for the Adventurer and Voyager tiers. I believe the 2 top tiers receive these every month for free. So yeah, I'll leave all the links down in the description box for all that. If you did enjoy the video, please share it with a friend who maybe is from the Netherlands and you think they would find this interesting, or someone who wants to go there. I, for one, am definitely in that category. I wish I could have included some more locations around the Netherlands, but there was only so many pages that I could work with. But special mention to Rotterdam and Amsterdam. I still might be able to include something special from the Netherlands in next week's weekly video, so hopefully you'll see a little bit more of the country then. And I thought I'd mention here, oh my gosh, I am so terrible at remembering what days of the week go where. I did this 3 times to get the Tuesday start of the week, and it's actually insane. Like, my brain just does not compute as to when the week would start, even though I'm looking at a calendar when I write it down. But I managed to fix it by putting black pen over the top. I don't love that part. I would have preferred it to be white paper, but when you make silly errors, you've got to try and fix them. So there you go, there's the final spread for my weekly, and now we will flip back through the full setup and show you the final pages for the Netherlands. So starting with our beautiful spring cover, I love the colours on this page. It makes me feel very warm and happy and friendly, and I can't wait to start using it in March. If you did enjoy the setup and this video, please join us in the community and subscribe to this channel. And if you did enjoy it, please click the thumbs up button to help me out and get it seen more on YouTube. And otherwise, I hope you have a great week, and I will see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.